Alright, the wonderful world of eukaryotic cells. Basically, we're going to be looking at animal and plant cells here. You can get other cells that are eukaryotic, for example, fungal cells. Eukaryotic is something called a protist, is also eukaryotic. We're not going to worry about those. We're just going to look at these two cell types. So typically, an animal cell might look something like this. Put a few little dots in it. You might get something like that. Now we need to know what all the bits are. Now obviously I hope we know what they are, so I'm not going to spend too long on that part. Make sure, by the way, I shouldn't have drawn that in pen really, I'll use a pencil from now on and get it right. If you're going to draw a label onto a diagram, it's not an arrow, it's just a straight line, and make sure it touches the thing that you are labelling. If you don't, it's incorrect. You know, if I put the next one on here for a second to show you, if I put cell membrane, I was doing my stuff and I've got that right. I went, yeah, okay, I'll draw my and it should be done with a ruler, but yeah, well, there we go. And I did it like that. Well, I'm not touching the cell membrane with my label, so it's wrong. Okay, it's got to actually touch it. Ding, there we go. And I should draw it with a ruler. At sixth form and A level, they actually like you to do it parallel to the top of the page as well. But I'm not going to worry about that. So let's just quickly go through the bits. The nucleus, do not say that it is the brain of the cell or it controls the cell. It contains DNA, that's what it does. Or it contains, that's fine, you could put genetic material if you prefer. You could even say it contains chromosomes, but I think contains DNA is the best one to put. The cell membrane controls what goes in and out of the cell. I'm going to put, I was going to say substances, let's put particles. Particles entering and exiting the cell. Might seem an odd choice of words, there is a reason for that. It won't become important until A level, but there we go. It actually does it on the basis of size, mostly. It also does it on the basis of charge. So some particles have a charge on them. For example, if you've done, or if you know from chemistry that sodium chloride, NaCl, common salt, if you like, table salt, when you dissolve it in water, it forms something called an ion, where the sodium ion is positively charged and the chlorine ion is negatively charged. So these are charged particles. And charged particles find it difficult to get through the membrane because of this charge. There are ways to do it. You have to have special little channels and proteins that allow them to go through. But anyway, the cell membrane controls what enters and exits the cell. You have the cytoplasm. Wrong pen there. This cyto means cell. That's kind of what it means from Greek. I think plasm means liquid, so it basically means cell liquid. Best way to think of that is like egg white. Okay, just imagine it like that. It's not too dissimilar. And that's where chemical reactions occur. If you wanted to give a specific example, I'm going to put e.g. protein synthesis, making proteins. Why have I picked that one? It's a really important reaction in cells making proteins. Now, I'm also going to put into here two other, what we'd call organelles. Organelles just means little bits of a cell, just like a body has got organs. It's not a very good body, is it? But you've got heart, lungs and kidneys. So a body is made up of organs. Don't know what that's meant to be down there. A cell is made up of organelles. There's little bits in there, okay? Let's label a couple. So these ones here are called ribosomes. These are the little dots. I don't think they're goodness me, I've done it again. They're not labelled, I don't think, in your textbook, but that's what they are. They're called ribosomes. And they're specifically where protein synthesis happens. They're in the cytoplasm, and that's specifically where protein synthesis occurs. You'll find more about those later. I'm going to draw one here, which is, it's not the best drawing. Let's draw one a bit bigger. I always think of these as those crisps, like knickknacks, if you know those crisps. Those sort of bibbly bobbly crisps. So I've magnified this massively, obviously, but that's what it might look like, something roughly like that. It's called a mitochondria, or if I am going to be proper, it's a mitochondrion, because there's only one of them. If there's lots of them, you would call it mitochondria. The plural. Okay. Sometimes it's referred to as the powerhouse of the cell. I like to think of them as little batteries in the cell. But if you're going to write a definition, I would say aerobic respiration occurs here. Now, you should remember that respiration is the release of energy from food, from doing it at key stage 3. Don't worry too much about what aerobic respiration is here. It means respiration using oxygen, so releasing energy from food using oxygen. It's not massively important that you remember that at the moment, but that's a typical animal cell. Now, a plant cell, if I try and draw this to sort of the same kind of size, would be actually much bigger. That's not a bad approximation for how much bigger. If you want a size, animal cells are maybe 20 micrometers big. Plant cells, at least double. So maybe 50 micrometers big, or larger, or more. I'm using the purpley bit for the cell membrane. They have around the outside cell wall. They have a nucleus, which is exactly the same as happens in animal cells. We'll see what this bit is in a second. They've got ribosomes, exactly the same. They've got mitochondria, exactly the same. So I'm not going to bother relabeling that. It's just these extra little bits. And I'm also going to do wibble wobble wibble like that. These sort of wibbly wobbly lines. So what have we got here? We've got the cell wall. Excuse me, this would be a regular shape, so this rectangle, sometimes they're a bit more hexagonal and so on. It prevents the cell bursting. That's what it does. It doesn't protect the cell. You can argue it helps keep the cell's shape. You'd actually talk about mechanical shape, but it prevents the cell from bursting. Why would the cell burst? Plant cells rely on being full of water. I've drawn this perfectly well. Normally, actually, the cell membrane is pushed right up against the cell wall. You can't even see it. It's pushed up against, because this cell, if you like, is absolutely jam-packed full of water. Think of it like a water balloon. And the cell wall is a box around the outside that prevents my water balloon from bursting. Okay, so there's my cell wall. This bit in the middle is called a permanent vacuole. Why permanent? Well, you can get vacuoles in animal cells, but they're not permanent. They are temporary. This one stays there all the time. Again, it's a bit difficult to understand what this does unless you've done things on osmosis. It contains sugars, mix of sugars called cell sap. Now, this is not the same thing as, sometimes if you come across trees and there's that sort of sticky stuff coming out of them, we say, oh yeah, it's sap. Different thing. Same idea. It's a kind of sugary liquid, really sugary liquid. And what happens is water will move towards wherever there's a sugary liquid. So that's how the plant absorbs its water. The water is moving in here, and it controls what's in here to control how much water it has. So that's what the permanent vacuole is. And finally, the chloroplasts, if I'm just getting enough space to do it. I'll put a plural there, so I'd better label both of them, or two of them at least. That's actually really bad. Try and avoid crossing lines. It's like Ghostbusters, don't cross the beams. There's an old reference. There we go. That's better. I shouldn't cross lines if I can avoid it on a diagram. But the chloroplasts, the site of photosynthesis. Again, let's not worry too much about the ins and outs of photosynthesis, other than knowing that that's where it happens. You might find that the chloroplasts are all at one end of the cell. You might find there are not many in here at all. For example, if this was from a root, there wouldn't be any chloroplasts in, because there's no light, so there's no point having any photosynthesis. And, that's why the roots of plants aren't really very green. Okay, but you need to know what these bits are for each cell, and you need to know what their role is. We'll do prokaryotes on another sheet. You will find some of the same structures in prokaryotes, but actually not that many in common, but they do exactly the same job as we've got on here.